Hi, thanks for joining me. Today, we're going to look at a rare 19th century knife. This one is another import by E.T. Allen of San Francisco. This one was a bit easier to identify as an importer and not a manufacturer. First, they're listed directly in Goins, and E.T. was easily identified as Edward T. Allen. He was a businessman in San Francisco in the late 19th century. And some fine people over on an internet firearms forum were looking for some info on the Edward Allen Company regarding some old firearm purchases. I'll link it in the description, but my journey starts here. A scan on that forum post, which the poster implied it came from an undated San Francisco city directory. So E.T. Allen, importer and manufacturer's agent, mostly firearm stuff, sporting goods, some cutlery. Manufacturer's agent is a middleman between the manufacturer and the wholesaler. So they would represent the manufacturer's goods and help get them into the stores onto the shelves. And then importer would be the same context, where there wouldn't be an E.T. Allen store he's importing for, but he would facilitate the imported goods from factories in the eastern states, as well as other manufacturers in the East and Europe, East here, of course, China, and get them onto the shelves of the local stores. Established 1875, Goins said cutlery started 1878, so that's pretty good. Here it says the manufacturers represented by Mr. Allen are, there's just one cutlery company. It's not a great scan. It says the Excelsior Knife Company. I looked into Excelsior. They're from Connecticut on the eastern seaboard. So E.T. Allen was representing their sales on the Pacific coast and probably also shipping them out to Asia and Australia. Excelsior, they were only around from 1880 to 1884. So that helps date this article to early 1880s. And according to this gentleman, he sold to an H.E. Skinner sometime in 1900. But American companies branded their knives. They weren't smiths looking for contracts like Sheffield or Zollingen. Rather, they had their own brand, their own stamp. They were just being resold. So that's not what this knife is with the E.T. Allen stamp. Also, Allen was an importer. He had European connections. He would have had access to the Zollingen and Sheffield markets. And there's an address here, 416 Market Street. Pretty good address. If we look at it now, this is a major street leading up towards the bay. It's a historical street. There's a historical clock tower, the ferry terminal up here. If 416 still existed today, it would be here. It's a bit taller now than it was then. We can look back at the older Google Street Maps. The earliest I could find was 1906. This was 4 days before the earthquake. And they didn't exist in 1906, but if they did, it would have been here in this building. All right, so imported from Europe. And if that's the case, it was from Sheffield. It has Sheffield characteristics. Nobody was making professional pocket cutlery besides Zollingen and Sheffield in the late 19th, at least in Europe. The Congress design with the multiple smaller pen blades suggests England. They mastered these. Then the thin empty bar shield is prominent on other knives I've traced to Sheffield. This one's off-center, which is pretty cool. The nickel-silver pins are finely flushed. This wasn't just hammered down with a ball peen. Not that the Germans are savages, rather this is English style, English quality pinning. And then the fancy gentleman style with the genuine pearl. That also says Sheffield. They made traditional English styles like the swelled center. German knives at this time were generally more decorative, especially when made for export. They had a lot of brass and etchings and ornate designs and flowers and fish and intricate handle details like this. The bolsters back on this knife are nickel silver. They're pretty small, which is an unusual feature on a luxury knife. The pearl's excellent. It's got a great shine, and it's not really shrinking. It's got this one crack on the center pin and a little bit more around the other pins. No big deal. It's a dual spring brass liner, 4-blade, like a Congress, but each blade's a spear point pen of different sizes. This is the main blade. It's the same style as the others with a long pull and swedge. The tip has a bit of an angle to it, but I don't see any sharpening on the knife. I think that's natural. All the blades are in the same shape with the dark patina and the carbon steel rusting. The tang stamp says E.T. Allen SF or San Francisco. Every tang is stamped just the same. And aside from the rusting, I don't see a lot of damage on the blades. It does, of course, have use, but the blades aren't majorly damaged or diminished at all. And all the blades have functional half stops and still snap, but the main blade's weaker than the rest. And that's all I've got from this stamp. I'd actually be pretty surprised if any collector had more than one of those. The knife is somewhere around 140 years old, likely one of a handful of survivors. I couldn't find any other examples of that stamp on the internet. Somehow this knife ended up in my late father's knife collection, which I'm documenting here on YouTube from A to Z. So if you'd like to see some other old and sometimes not so old knives, feel free to subscribe and join me, or check out some of my other videos.